And the thing is that, like, the longer you wait, the more it feels like lying and cheating. So struggling or interested, it is a first. There's dating apps that are specifically designed for kink.
Right. You check those boxes.
Yeah, it's like, or put it in your bio.
Right. I'm going to hold you here. I want to welcome everybody who's just tuning in to a conversation that didn't sound like it's about algorithms, but this show is called AI Affected, and my name is Russ Gooberman. I'm your host. The intent for this show is to be about our rapidly changing world and how algorithms and machine learning is affecting our life, our work, and our relationships. And just a quick bit about me. I'm kind of a baby Gen Xer. I'm like the youngest part of that generation that grew up before the rise of the internet. So the internet didn't come along until I was 15, 16, which is to say there was plenty of media to imbibe before the internet came along. Like, we all grew up on movies and TV, especially the 90s latchkey kid generation. But the internet changed things. And AOL chat rooms led to online gaming. And my feeling is that the internet went from this wonderful playground that we could just explore and discover things to something that's constantly pushing you in one direction or another, something that's constantly trying to manipulate. And I hope to have guests to try to explore that. Like, what has changed in the past 10 to 15 years? Why do we have maybe more of a darker internet/metaverse on our hands? And so along those lines, I'm very excited to introduce our guest today. He is a kindred spirit. He's a geek in arms, somebody who's been immured in geek culture for a long time. He was the host of Geek Speak TV, the podcast, the author of Dating with Geeks, worked in the gaming industry. He's a gaming journalist, and one of my favorite human beings, Patrick Henry.
Thanks, Russ.
Welcome.
Oh, you got me all feelings, warm feelings. Thank you so much. I really thank you for being here, and as your first guest too. And congratulations.
Thank you, and thank you for being here,
dude. Big honor, big time honor, and I'm excited, definitely excited. And you mentioned the internet changing our lives. Growing up, I think they call us Zennial. That 78, born 1976 to 1983, were that weird
in between Gen X and the millennials.
Yeah, we had the analog and the digital. We grew up with both, and we saw the both change, and we are a little different than both of the other generations.
Yeah, I'm definitely part of the generation where all those memes about, do you know what this piece of equipment is? And it's like the CD that you would plug into your car so that the cassette player on your car could read CDs.
How did that work? That's magic.
That's it.
And you mentioned the internet coming out, and the first thing that I remember that changed in society when the internet first came out was that McDonald's turned to 24 hours.
Wait, that was an internet phenomenon?
I believe so, because I lived right next door to McDonald's, about less than a mile away, and I was just starting to drive. And when the internet came out, I'm like, okay, cool. There's the internet thing, and I'm up till like 11:30. I'm so hungry. There's nothing. Oh, McDonald's is open 24 hours now, and I was like, I wonder if that's because of the internet.
So you think McDonald's was like the first on the front lines to figure out that everyone was playing MechWarrior
or AOL chat rooms? AOL chat rooms, man. I missed. I mean, there was times when I didn't go to school because I was on a chat room with some cute girl.
Into the A/S/L.
If that I thought was a cute girl turned out to be a 37-year-old man in Texas. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So yeah, I missed school a couple times because I was up late night chatting in the chat room. The chat rooms were the way to go.
Talk about the Wild West, by the way. Like, I introduced the show as kind of nostalgic for 90s era internet, but on the other hand, AOL chat rooms were just a free for all because there were no rules. Nobody knew what was going on yet. So it's just you threw a bunch of people, children, adults, predators, nice people, and they were just all these anonymous chat handles, all like A/S/L-ing each other.
And then the weird structure of how chat rooms would develop and like form, you would get like a leader of the chat room that would like run the thing and be able to turn the whole chat room against one person with the drop of a hat. And I was like, that's such a weird thing, a weird power to wield where you don't have a face, you're just all typing, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm ruling the chat room.
So that's really interesting because what you're bringing up is kind of, I guess, like a deep-seated human psychological phenomenon of just like there's a dominant personality that's going to run the room, whether the room is a real room or whether it's a digital chat room. And I think like a lot of the internet phenomenon that we see is maybe just kind of human psychology translated onto it.
Sadly so. I think so. That's why it's so dark and ugly at times, and then it also can be so beautiful and uplifting at times. Depends where you look, and that's life, isn't it? It's ugly everywhere, but then also if you look, there's also beauty everywhere, so it's kind of hand in hand.
So speaking of predatory AOL chat rooms, I read Dating for Geeks.
Okay.
I made copious notes.
Nice.
One thing that just stuck in my head before I even look at my notes is that you mentioned warning people against being catfished like at least 2 or 3 times in the opening chapter. Did that ever happen to you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot. I mean, I usually caught them before I showed up. One catfish it wasn't a terrible catfish. It was just, I needed to know this before I showed up. She was paraplegic and did not mention that at all. And it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, well, you shared a face picture and that was okay. And I did ask for a body picture and she didn't. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm not that shallow. I'll show up. We've been chatting. And I was at the age where I needed to be active and I was playing sports and I was in my early mid-20s when this happened. And so when I showed up, it was just completely just deflated me, and I got to know her a little bit and she was like, and the first thing she said was, sorry, I didn't mention this. I was like, okay. So you knew that it was something you probably should have mentioned early on.
That's so difficult.
And we still went on the date, went and got coffee with her and her handler, and we had a good time and I was a gentleman and, but I told her like, I need to, you knew in our chat and our exchange that I want to go camping and things like that. And it's like, not that you can't, but it's going to be a whole issue, and
yeah, I think that's like, obviously that's like an extreme example, but it does kind of encapsulate the whole, like the guilt that's built in to telling someone that they're not who they represented themselves to be. And like your example is the ultimate because like nobody would feel good about being like, hey, I didn't agree to go out with you because you're, not what you represent yourself to be as a paraplegic.
Right.
But to a lesser extent, if somebody's
I felt like such a douchebag. I'm not going to lie. I felt like such a...
Yeah, but I feel like this person who intentionally didn't tell you what her condition was playing on that guilt, right?
Actually, I did. At one point, I wondered about that, and a friend told me that too. I'm like, maybe she did. I don't know. Maybe she thought that she would be able to, get me with that. But it's one of those things where when you spend enough time in bad relationships, you don't put up for any BS. And that's definitely something where I have, had some bad relationships. So I get exactly what I want. Or I'm like, there's compromise, of course, but I'm looking for very specific things.
Can you give me your splits of like how much time you spent approximately on the various different apps and services between the ones you mentioned in your book, which are like OkCupid, Tinder, Bumble?
To be honest, the majority of the relationships I get into are from online dating.
But I just mean in terms of each of those platforms.
Years. Years. There's been times where I've been single for 6 years at a time on purpose. But I'd use the apps just to meet people with the understanding, like, look, I'm just dating, no serious relationships. And they turn into serious relationships eventually, but the intention is to stay dating. But I would probably stay on an app about 3 or 4 months at a time before I met somebody. I'm not a take all comers type of guy, like I'm very picky. You gotta get my interest in conversation in email first before I rush out to meet you. And it's like pulling teeth sometimes to get a conversation going. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna bother with you. And those that are really engaging and like, hey, give me your number so we can talk. I'm like, okay, fine. This person wants to actually meet. So that usually takes about 2 or 3 months, of fishing on Plenty of Fish or shooting arrows on OkCupid. But it all depends on your profile pictures. That's a big thing that I talk about in the book is like, make sure you have a good profile picture. Also the structure of what you're looking for. Some, believe it or not, I mean, this is talking mostly directed to men, but women know this as well. Some women are on there just to have sex. Some women are on there just to date, so put what you want into your profile. Exactly what you're looking for. Don't be the guy who's like, oh, I'm looking at for marriage if you just want to get laid, because you're gonna end up breaking hearts. Put on there, I'm just looking for X, Y, and Z. And the whole reason why I wrote the book was because a buddy of mine was having such a hard time finding a girlfriend to stick. And after about 4 or 5 months, they'd just disappear. And I was like, so what's going on with that? They're alive, right? You're not murdering them, burying in your basement, right?
That's a strange like medium-term relationship to have too before someone ghosts you.
And it turns out, I was like, so what's going on? And he had heard that I had gone to some swinger parties and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, so you're kind of freaky kinky. I'm like, yeah, I've been around the block once or twice. And he's like, so help me with what's going on. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I need to broach a subject with people I'm dating, and it's hard because it's a kink. I said, I interrupt him. He's a kink, right? He's like, yeah. I go, what is it? It's like, well, when I get in love with somebody, I really want them dressed up like a panda. And me too. And, oh, so you want some panda sex? And I laughed, and he kind of like got all blushy. I'm like, hey, it's okay. It's okay. I understand you're called a furry, just so you know.
This has a name.
It has a name, and there's many people like you, and like I told him, we were talking earlier, this is something that you have to bring up on the first date, in the first couple of conversations.
Can I ask you a question? And again, this is mostly out of my own ignorance, so I apologize in advance if my question is offensive. But
Never.
like, do you think that like furryism, it seems like such a specific thing that it seems like it's born out of anime or hentai or something like that, rather than like the Kantian like a priori like in a void somebody envisioned wanting to be a panda in the bedroom? Like, there's no way that just came out of nowhere, right?
I think it has to do maybe with role play. I mean, it could be a facet of cosplay, but it's been around for a long time. So before anime, I almost said Japanese anime because Japanime back in the day. Before that came around, it also might be our love of Mickey Mouse, and those big characters. I never really asked him why.
Like some really powerful childhood association with like those characters.
Yeah, and maybe they humped their Mickey Mouse when they were a kid, and they saw the Mickey Mouse and like I got weird feelings in my pants, But it's one of those things too where it might be really uncomfortable to bring up early on, but you're going for the best relationship possible.
So is your argument that like innate furryism like existed well before the internet, but the internet does what it does, which is allowing people that are like-minded to come together and find unities, and so it really exploded at the dawn of the internet because all these people just kind of found each other?
Absolutely. It's been fantastic for that kind of thing. And you got to find your people, and there's always somebody out there. That's what the big geek community is. It's our people, we get along so much. But then there's facets, the people who like the anime cosplay, people who like the actual building of the cosplay, people who don't like the cosplay at all, just like to go to the conventions and buy stuff. There's all kinds of geekdom, and the same thing goes with sex and relationships. There's all kinds of specific relationships. I know some guys, a guy I'm thinking of in Vegas, he has a master sub relationship with 5 different women who live in his house. That's a lot of work for me, to think about. But I
feel like Vegas is a good place for that.
Oh yeah, Vegas is awesome. But I mean, you'll find that kind of relationship in here in LA, and I have a poly partner that I dated. She's married and she just had a kid about 1.5 years ago. So poly people also have kids, in their marriage relationships. Not all poly people get married. And so back to the furry thing, he kept holding off on that information until about the 4th or 5th month of his relationship, and that's why when he came out in his panda suit, hoping for the best response, they freaked out and ran.
Oh, well, yeah, that explains why people would disappear at the 5-month mark, because you're getting this reveal that you had no idea.
And it's something, but that is a big reason I think a lot of people cheat in their monogamous relationships, is because they're afraid to tell their partner what they want, what they're going to think, the judgment.
And they just want to get that thing out of their system with some other disposable kind of side relationship.
And no one's ever going to know or judge them for it, and then it's done, one and done. But it's never one and done. And that's what I tell people all the time. The kinks and fetishes, they're 2 different things, but the kink is something that you can't really, you can go without, but the fetish is something that you need in order to be sexually satisfied.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that distinction before.
So there's definite distinctions, and so and people don't. They use them interchangeably. Like a kink is like, I can orgasm without you pinching my nipples, or I can only orgasm when you pinch my nipples. That's a big thing. And so people are ashamed about just the simplest of things. I can't believe like people don't consider oral sex. Oral sex is a kink. It's something that like not everybody does. Not everybody's into it. They're like, really? I'm like, yes.
Only the hardcore people at the edge of the spectrum like can't function in any other way.
And so, it's one of those things where you got to get all that stuff out in the open early. Because I think the longer things go on, people don't want to lose this person they're starting to get an attachment to, so they'll keep more secrets. And they won't share as much as they would have, because what if this person judges me and they leave me?
Look at you. You're like defending monogamous relationships by allowing for these open lines of communication so people don't have to go sneak away and do the thing in the dark.
I've been hurt a lot by people who have snuck away, and my response has always been, it's the lie that hurts me. It's never been the act of you doing what I was like, that. Why didn't you tell me you needed something out? Because we could have worked something out. We could have been, open in our relationship. We could have, allowed you outside whatever you needed, because the love is what mattered more so than the physicality. And so that's when I kind of was like, maybe there's something mental going on, with these people and I saw, and was a life-changing aha moment. I'm going to think of it. A movie called Nymphomaniac. You heard of this movie?
I'm not sure. I mean, I know the term, but I don't know about it.
It's a movie called Nymphomaniac and Nymphomaniac 2. And Willem Dafoe is in 2.
They amped up the budget for Nymphomaniac.
Yes, because number 1 was like, whoa. But warning to the people who are going to look this up, it's got the first time I seen full penetration with regular actors. Yeah, they went the full Monty on this one. And it tells a story of a young woman who was molested at a young age and how she grew up to deal with that, and it turned into nymphomania, and how it can have a bad outcome. And if you can take control of it and understand what it is, you can control it and have a healthier relationships.
I find that to be maybe the most fascinating part of a lot of the kink world, is that that a lot of it comes, I mean, much of it probably comes from this kind of either childhood experience, childhood trauma, abuse, and then people are kind of saddled with this thing that they carry around for the rest of their lives that was born out of that original trauma. And then how do you take this thing, which may have been born out of a very unhealthy situation, and turn it into part of a healthy sexual relationship?
I'm right here, man. That is exactly what happened to me, and and that's one of the second chapter of my book is understanding your fetish and kink, understanding where it came from and why. Why am I like this? And with me, I got married at 18 and I had a child at 19. I don't recommend it. It's a very hard life. But I was in love with my high school sweetheart, and we were very much in love. And about our 4th or 5th year of being married, I was just this overwhelming desire to see her with another woman, and I didn't want anything to do with it. I could have just I just wanted to see her with another woman. And it was one of those things where it was really getting to me. I'm like, man, every time we're having sex, I'm thinking about like, that would be so hot. That would be so hot. So I breached the subject with her. Did not go over well. And I was like, man, that almost ruined my relationship just bringing this up. What happened? So we ended up getting divorced. And so I'm dating again. And the same thing starts to happen when I fall in love with my next girlfriend. I'm like, this is weird. That I had no desire whatsoever. So I'm seeing a psychiatrist at the time. And so I'm talking about this, why my marriage broke up. I mentioned that. And then I mentioned this new relationship that I had also mentioned. And it went over a little better because I was treaded a little more lightly. But it still was something I was like, where'd this come from? I'm like, I don't know, man. It's just, I had these feelings for you and I just wanted it to be so. And it was something like I couldn't do for you. I'm not a woman's touch and the intimacy that a woman give another woman, a man can't do.
Right.
So talking to my shrink, and I was like, I really want to understand where this goes to. And she's like, so we went back and was like, what's the first? And I remember the first thing that popped in my head, I was like, I was about 3 or 4 years old, and my older brothers had a porn watching party when our parents were off in Vegas. And the first scene I ever saw was 2 girls, with a guy. And
it
imprinted on my 3-4-year-old mind. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That's how it's done. And, growing up to be an adult, all of a sudden these things popped up. I'm like, okay, so it happened when I was 3 or 4 years old. I had no idea what was going on. And sure enough, as an adult, it comes out that, oh, okay. So now as an adult, to be able to have normal relationships, I need a bisexual woman. That's one of my checks on my dating profile. Are you a bisexual woman?
Right.
And they ask why. It's like, because there might be a day where I want this comes out, this feeling of me comes out. And you have to be okay with it, or be at least entertaining the idea, and I'm of the age now where I don't need to have it. I've had it in my past, and I've lived that fantasy and understand that it's not that fantastic of a thing to have and need in a relationship. But now I understand where the feeling's coming from.
Let me ask you a question to try to I want to sprinkle some AI talk on this conversation.
Yes. We started off with that way, online.
We started there. And I don't want to stop anything else that's happened because it's been fascinating. But I do want to, so full disclosure, I've probably been on 200 or more first dates in terms of online dating. So I'm a veteran, which is all the more reason why I enjoyed the book, because I was like, yes, coffee dates are perfect.
Yes.
Because if you take someone to the movies, you sit there for 2 hours, you don't talk to each other, and then you figure out at the end of that whether you want to see each other again. And it makes no sense.
No sense.
So my experience I think a majority of it was OkCupid, which, like a lot of these online sites, uses this kind of matching system. And this is where the algorithm part comes in, where it goes, well, you filled out our survey and she's filled out our survey and you guys match up on this, this, and this. And on the other side of that, having much later met my wife, who in a totally analog, context, we met in a performance group that we were all in.
So cute.
But like, it occurred to me that if my wife had been on OkCupid would never have matched me with her in a million years. It would have been like, stay away from this person because you don't agree, because she's like more religious than I am. She's more traditional in certain senses, and I'm interested in politics, which she isn't.
They did that percentage thing. She would be like 47% match. But like, I never would.
We would have looked at that and been like, oh, well, this is doomed.
And I myself have done that myself. Looked at a 50% match. I'm like, oh man, no way. I'm only going to talk to 80% matches. But I mean,
but like, having been married to her, there's some sense of where like I've moved a little bit from being like totally secular to like, I understand that this religious tradition is kind of meaningful in certain ways. And like, I could try to enjoy Disney movies a little more than just hating everything Disney.
Oh my goodness.
And so like, but if via the internet algorithm, if you're selecting somebody that just is like exactly like you and checks all the boxes, like, are you missing something? Does it leave something to be desired? Is the whole system like wrong-headed?
I would think so. I mean, you're proof of that. I would think I would tell people to trust their instincts more than anything. Like, initial attraction is important. Attraction's is very important.
Which is that's the one thing that you can't gauge on online dating unless the pictures are perfect and accurate. And even then, like, without all of the senses, you really don't know about the actual physical attraction part of it until you meet.
Yes, that's very true as well. I mean, the initial look of the person might attract you, and then, it comes in stages. It's the first profile picture that gets your attention, and then what they wrote would get your attention, and then you have to meet them to get the full effect of whether or not. And then I also have a rule when it comes, and I think I put in the book, the 6-month rule. You know, you got to wait 6 months to see how that person really is as a person, because after 6 months, I found that people will let their behavior guard down. And
they take their personality shield down.
Yeah, and you'll see they snap if they're hungry. They will, they just, if they're lying, if they'll, they get interest in other people. Usually around 6 months is when that will, buckle down for them. And me being a polyamorous person, I date monogamous people, and I tell them all the time, like, look, I'm polyamorous. You have to tell me if anything's bothering you, if you feel like you're being neglected. It takes a lot of communication, and on their part, they have to be understanding. Like, I was this way when you met me. I'm not cheating on you. I'm not being dishonest. Like, I have a relationship that's a year and a half older than our relationship. So if you want to play the priority game, seniority rules.
Oh man, is it like a Mormon household in that regard? Of like you have like the first wife and the second wife,
the sister wives.
They're like they have rankings.
God, that would be so much easier on the housework and the meal prep. But no, the lines never cross because there's a difference between polyamory and swingers. Like a swinger household might have something like that where everyone's involved, or like there's some polyamory couples that do live together, where it's the guy and the two wives, but mine are separate girlfriends. If I met a girl who already had a girlfriend, and we got along, it's a possibility that the three of us could date, but it doesn't automatically give me access to her at all, or would I assume so? Like, that's her own different relationship. Yeah, and when I first started dating a poly person, she was a baller. She had her long-term 9-year relationship that they lived together, and then she had 3 other boyfriends that she had over California, like in Anaheim, and then it was me. And then I remember she had a Super Bowl party, and we all were there.
Nice.
And
there's a sitcom premise for
oh wow, it was something. It was so smooth, so peaceful, so fun. Like, because she was a dominant personality, I'm a dominant personality. So when we're together, we don't try to dom each other. We're just two people who enjoy each other's company. She has a sub who was like a service sub, who would like to sit down next to her feet and bring her drinks, kind of a thing. And so he would ask her if she wanted a drink, and she would like ask me, do you want anything? And I'd be like, no, I'm good. No, we're okay. Okay, cool. And we'd keep watching the game, and then her husband's over there cooking the meal, and her other boyfriend's sitting over there watching the game, and she would come sit next to me for about 20-30 minutes and go sit next to him for about 20-30 minutes, and we just we all got along. We talked to each other. She introduced us to each other, but never was the understanding that we were going to try to like be a gangbang or anything like that. It was just that she loved us all individually, and she wanted us all there on this special day for her. And it's one of those things where when you care about somebody, you put aside jealousy, the pettiness of that stuff, and just like, yeah, I'm here for her, and she loves you, which means you must be a good guy, and I'm a good guy, so we're good guys. And we found commonalities. We're all geeks, and it turned out, we all love video games, and we all ended up having a good time watching the football game. And
that's the great equalizer, is like everyone can play Super Mario together. A chance.
Mario Kart rules the world. And Mario Kart on your phone now. Like I wrote that at a review. I mean, it's still one of my favorite games. I play it every day.
It's fun. Okay, so you've well, granted, you're the expert, so you've spent a lot of time navigating these waters. So you paint a very utopian picture of like how to actually make this stuff work. I want to talk about the other side of this for a moment, because, and I'm sure you've come across this, people who need your book are people who are struggling, specifically young men and the loneliness epidemic that's going on. Speaking of Japanese culture, it seems like Japan is always like living like 5 years in the future ahead of us, and they've had this kind of relationship reproductive problem because men and women are having a hard time getting together, and now we're experiencing that for the first time.
Weird. I talked to somebody about this yesterday in the park.
Crazy.
She's from Germany, and she mentioned that, like, and she was so, people aren't effing, and I was like,
yeah,
what?
She's like, there's a news story that was going around in the last couple weeks that said that young men are twice as likely to be single as young women the exact same age. And there could be a number of explanations for that. Young women might be dating older men, they might be dating each other, they might be abstaining, whatever. But it seems like young men in particular are having a hard time meeting people. They're having a hard time making connections, and they're like very often devolving into worlds we know like video games and kind of withdrawing from society.
I do have a theory about that, and I think it's the quality of young man that's out there right now. It's slim pickings for the women, honestly. I feel bad for a lot of them, because I've seen a lot of the emails that these guys send to people, and it's like, I don't know what they need to do as far as, you know, fixing their trauma. You know, I mean, the lack of respect for women, the opposite sex, is very apparent. They just don't know how to talk to women. I think that, you know, hey, let me hit that is a good way to open up a conversation for the first time ever with somebody. Like, in what reality would that ever get a woman hot? You know, hey, let me hit that.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is what? Like, at least say, hey, my name is, can I hit that? You know? But yeah, just a basic, you know, manners and approach and how to approach and have a conversation with somebody. I did a podcast years ago, back in 2013, where my co-host was a bro type of F-boy. And he had invited this guest on who was a singer, very talented, very beautiful. And I was like, yeah, cool, come on. Let's do our, and she wasn't that much of a geek, but whatever, you know, talk to me about your art. And we were hitting it off, and all of a sudden my co-host turned, so the guy was trying to pick you up in a bar, how would he do it? And I was like, okay, well, we're going down, we're live, so like, we're going down this road.
Very carefully.
Yeah. And she's like, okay, well, shoot your shot, like, go ahead. And he's like, so hey, what's your sign? You know, and I was like, oh god. And she like rolled her eyes, she's like, stop. And then she looked at me and she's like, go ahead, you know, I think this is on YouTube, you can find it. She's like, go ahead, you shoot your shot. And I'm like, okay. I first of all, I don't really approach people in a bar, so this would not happen.
Yeah.
Second of all, hi, my name's Patrick, what's your name? She's like, oh yeah, I'll totally go out with you. I was like, oh cool, awesome. And that's all it took, was just me just treating her like a person.
Let me play devil's advocate with you for a second, because I'm sure that there's a large contingent of bros, and like the thing about not knowing how to communicate, you know, not knowing how to talk to people they're interested in, is absolutely a phenomenon for younger people. What about the nice guy phenomenon? So like, this is kind of where I feel like I came from, which is that I was raised by a single mother who taught me, be nice, be respectful. And while that was good advice in general, I didn't have a girlfriend until I was in college. Not that there weren't opportunities before that, but from my point of view, I was always so respectful that I thought that I would be getting into the airspace of any girl. And I'm like, and in my head was always like, these girls are being bothered all the time. Like, I don't want to be yet another person who's bothering them at their locker, asking them on a date. And so I didn't.
You were too gentlemanly.
I was, and I always opted out. And even when it was like kind of clear that there was a mutual interest, I had a huge problem of making the leap of like explicitly letting them know that I was interested in them. And then even in doing all this online dating that I did, it would be like we would gel, you know, we would vibe on a bunch of different subjects, but I never made the transition from we're having a conversation to I'm actually physically interested in you. And so I think that contingent also exists, and we don't want to call all the failed relationships the problem of like dude bros.
Right, because I came also from the nice guy cloth, and there is there's different factors I think that people have to try to recognize when they're first getting to know somebody, you know. And there's the obvious, like the physical touching, you know, someone's touching you all the time, that means that they're interested in you. And then in today's day and age, just flat out say it, like, hey, I am interested in you, can we kiss?
That's like a super scary prop for somebody who hasn't done that a bunch.
Yeah.
It's a very scary proposition.
It gets easier.
I have memories of myself as like a 16-year-old hanging out in the house of a girl that I liked, who was totally fine with me being in her house, sitting next to her on the couch, watching TV together. And just to get my arm to do the old school move of like put your arm around the person, I like had to yell in my head at myself to get my body to do things. I was like, put your arm around her, just do it. And it was like paralyzing completely.
You know, it's like anything that has to do with fear. You have to jump. You have to make that move, or else you will. You know, fortunately, if no one makes the move, no one's gonna make the move. You know, so you have to recognize, and you know, it hurts to be rejected, but the quickest way to get an answer is ask the question. You know, and like that's the biggest thing that I push on everybody is communication. Like communication. Especially when you're dealing with kink and sex. You know, but even just in talking to somebody. Like, you know, I'm interested in you. Are you interested in me romantically? Because there is no friend zone, you know, there is none of that. It's like, you know, you just get to know people, you know, and some people have feelings, some people don't, you know, some people think of you romantically, sexually.
Oh, yeah. My wife friend zoned me for like 7-8 months.
Yeah,
I thought there was no chance.
Yeah, and you're just getting to know somebody. Different people move at different speeds, you know. I know a girl who's polyamorous, but she doesn't have sex with anybody after the first year of knowing them. Yeah. You know, and most guys aren't going to hang around for that. that. So the people who do hang around are special to her, and they mean something to her. And it's just, there's no, it's just, you gotta take the leap. You gotta, and the easiest, the fastest, the most painless way, even though it starts to hurt the first time when they say, no, I don't want to kiss you, or they give you that look like, what are you, crazy? You totally misread those signs. Then it's like, no harm, no foul. At least you know where you stand. You don't have to question anymore.
It's easy to say no harm, no foul. But when inevitably, if you do this a number of times, someone is going to act really taken aback, really offended. You get the how dare you, and that causes damage.
Well, I think that if you look for all the signs first, so there's hand touching, there's, the eye looking, they're calling you for a date every night, there's obvious signs of like, this person's interested, or at least they think they're interested. Maybe they just want a buddy. Like, hey, are you interested in romantically? Or if you're feeling it and you're about to lean in for the kiss, ask. Is it okay if I kiss you right now? Because I'm feeling some feelings here. I'm about to. Okay, go for it. I think that's the way to go. Because I think if anybody's taken aback and offended by you, if you were hanging out and having a good time all up into that moment, they should see that. Oh, okay, this person. I could see where they got the idea that I wanted them to kiss me. No,
Fair
I'm
enough.
Sorry. We were having a good time.
I will pass this advice back to my 16-year-old self.
I mean, I wish
he will feel better about himself.
You know what? Speaking of AI stuff and maybe get the algorithm going for this. Big Mouth. Have you seen that on Netflix?
No.
I wish I had this show when I was a kid, because they talk a lot about what we talked about, from the different types of sexualities. I mean, I learned some things on this show, and it's about kids growing up in that weird adolescent, about to be, I think they're already teenagers, yeah. They're like in the 9th grade, I think. Some things are completely inappropriate for 9th graders to be talking about, but it's like the Wonder Years should have been for us. Instead of making me chase my Winnie Cooper, I should have been learning that there's STDs and what a period is, and that girls get horny too, and all these things that I had no concept of until I was an adult. That
you didn't have like a health class or whatever in high school.
Oh yeah, but health class was more like, this is how you clean your penis. This is
oh, that's something.
Yeah, it was important. And thank you for that.
I just got reminded. So I had that health class. I think it was senior year in high school. It was taught by this awesome. I think he was a science teacher in his normal life, but he also taught the health class. And he had like a stroke at one point, so half his mouth kind of like laid open. So he always had a handkerchief that he would be like dabbing it as he was explaining how to use condoms and stuff like that. And there was a cute girl who I never hung out with and I never talked to, who sat right in front of me in health class, and we would play footsie. It just started happening like halfway through the year, and we would do it every day, and it would be like really intense. And then the bell would ring, and she would go her way, and I would go my way. We never talked about it. It was crazy. But it was also like, I had never dated anyone up to that point. So it was like, it's intense experience of like,
and she totally ignored you, huh?
Did it not happen? Well, I didn't even, I don't think I tried to initiate anything. So it wasn't like she ignored me. It was just we ignored, it might even have been my fault. I'm sure it was.
It was your footsie little. Yeah. You know what though? That is another kink. And some people have a public affection or a public groping.
Yeah, it was like that kind of like secretive display of public affection kind of thing.
And that's why I always, consent is a big thing nowadays, because I mean, you can never know what people are into, and like I know some women that are into being groped on the bus by strangers. I'm like, how do you go about not being, violated by that?
It seems like a dangerous
tightrope
to be walking.
Yeah, so you have to, and they like to, and I'm definitely going to put a chapter in my book about the safe ways to go about doing that kind of thing, because there is a safe way. And you can't have completely anonymous, encounters, even though that's what they're looking for. There needs to be a safety, in everything that stuff.
Okay, I feel like we could do this.
I know. I was about to say we got off of it.
But I want you to take off your dating guru hat for a second,
okay,
and put on your gaming hat.
Yes.
And I want to specifically talk about MMORPGs.
Yes.
Because we'll explain what that is for those of you who don't know what MMORPGs.
Massively multiplayer online role-playing game.
Yeah, because those have existed forever. They were MUDs, multi-user dungeons, before they were graphic-induced games.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe about MUDs until you said that.
I played MUDs before, and I've always been into, like, I was a kid playing regular RPGs like Dragon Warrior and The Legend of Zelda, and then all of a sudden, when the internet came along, then you threw a bunch of people into a community who were all collectively playing these RPGs. And I just want, because, like, you worked for gaming companies that were running these early games, and the whole thing must have just been like a social experiment.
Oh, wow, yeah. It was very interesting. I mean, because we were like the in-game police for the game. I worked for NCSoft, and we had a game called Lineage 2, which is available now for your mobile app. But it was a PC-based game, Korean game. Very hardcore PvP system, unforgiving. You would drop your items if you were killed.
Oh,
yeah.
That is hardcore, and I appreciate that, because games have gotten so soft of like, there's no penalty, you just walk around as a ghost and you pick up all your things and you're fine. I like the old games where people can like loot your body, take all your stuff, leave you for dead. You have to start over as a different person.
You would die. Like if somebody killed you, you could drop your items, they could take the item, you would de-level, you would lose level.
Wow.
And you could de-level so much that you couldn't use the items you had, so you would be stuck.
The stakes were very high.
Very high. People would get heated, and it was all clan-based. It was basically like what WoW is, but more hardcore. Very clan-based, and we would monitor the chat logs for, racist, inappropriate conversations. And oh my goodness, you would just see like, people lying to each other, husbands and wives cheating on each other. We would there was one where it was like a love triangle between the clan leader, his wife, and one of his like number one lieutenants.
Wow.
And like they were PMing each other, talking about like, okay, he's leaving to work, you can kill him in 15 minutes. We're like, oh my god, he's going right now. And then sure enough, she'd be logged off for 3 hours and then log back on again, and like see him directly email her husband who's at work. He must be logged on from his house on his character. We're like, oh, this is terrible. But
so you were ostensibly doing like cybersecurity, but really you're just like watching a soap opera
basically
unfold every single day at work.
Oh yeah, all kinds of different things. I mean, people crying to us, and we had one guy call our office like nonstop trying to get back his sword of +5 that was taken from him. He's like, the guy said he's just gonna try it on to see what it looked like with his character, and he ran away. And I was like, man, you know what? I mean, unfortunately, that's not you didn't break the game.
Yeah.
You just gave it to him.
I was talking about this before we got here, but I used to play a MUD called Gemstone 3, which was all text-based, which is amazing that you could live inside this world where there are no graphics. Everything's just being described to you via text. It would never fly today.
When I saw that the first time, I was like, the hell is this? Yeah, my roommate played.
Use your imagination. And I had a ranger character, and I had this awesome piece of armor, this like golden ranger protector breastplate, and this guy was an enchanter. And the way the game worked, you had to hand over the piece to the enchanter, you give them all this money, and then they do the enchantments and they make it extra powerful, they give it back to you. And the dude just disappeared with my golden ranger protector, and I had to like do an investigation, like call up his friends and be like, this motherfucker hasn't been at work,
Wow. Yeah,
chase him down.
I mean, unfortunately, our game Lineage 2, unfortunately, in Korea there was a murder over our game. Like somebody because they have a lot of cafes they play in, and this one guy was like, I got over on this guy, I just got his +6, and the guy was like, that was me, stabbed the guy. And it's like, wow, they get so heated over these games, and it's like, that was the other thing too. We had to do a lot of banning of people who were trading things illegally, like going on eBay, and like we even had one drug ring that was coordinating deliveries, and we had to report them and send the files to the DEA and whatnot. So
wow.
Yeah, so I mean, gaming is one of those things where we dealt a lot with China, because they would buy 50 or 60 licenses at a time and farm.
Do the gold farming factory where people try to make money on the side by selling in-game currency to people for real money.
It's a big industry. Like,
I know it. I mean, more recently I played New World, which is Amazon Game Studios MMORPG, and that was just full of gold selling spammers that could not get rid of them.
I'm all about the Star Trek Online right now. That's my MMORPG. It's just so good. I'm just enjoying it.
So let me ask you a question. Again, I'm going to try to slowly steer the kayak back to AI stuff. I want to ask, because the era that you're talking about when you were working for Lineage 2 was kind of just the beginning of gamification and people understanding how to exploit gamers and their tendencies. Like, how much of that were you party to, where it went from just, this is just a human social experiment that we're watching, kind of seeing what people do and regulating illegal behavior, to let's see if we can push them to buy more in-game items, or let's see if we can push the gameplay to encourage this type of behavior?
Well, in the contrary, NCSoft was very against selling in-game items. They were not. They said that, that gamers, we wanted hardcore gamers and want to earn their weapons, we want to earn their items, and we were banning at least 200 accounts a day for buying or selling gold, illegal gold. And we, as the GMs, were called game masters. GMs were like, we're getting tired. This is our job. Can we just give them these stuff, like they want to buy it, can't we just make some money, let's give it to them, because we as GMs wanted the stuff too, and they wouldn't give us the stuff to play with because we wanted to, because they had no manuals for the game, so we had to figure it out ourselves. Like, this quest is broken, all right, let me get there, let me try to figure this out. And we had a Korean translator in the office who would translate the quests on the fly for us. Like, okay, this is broken in English, this doesn't make sense, bro. And he'd be like, okay, let me fix this. So it was really cool to live in that kind of live environment of MMORPG. But at the same time, I lost my train of thought.
Well, was there a point in time where it started to be like, rather than you're observing and helping, that you're trying to start to slowly control the behavior of the populace?
We were trying to see. I think Lineage 2 was also a very unique game where it was very hardcore, like we mentioned, and we didn't want to involve ourselves at all in the politics because there was a lot of politics going on. There was guilds and guild castles, and these castles controlled the entire economy. So only one guild master can hold the castle, but it takes up to 10 to 15 guilds to take the castle. So
how do you divvy that all up?
And so you would see the conversations and it was very fast. I mean, most of the time it was very amicable, but every once in a while you had somebody like, I'm taking the throne, and they take the throne, and the whole month of them, because one siege a month, so the whole month of them just talking back to each other, arguing with each other, like, I can't believe you did this to us, blah blah blah. And he's like, what do you want, man? You guys took too long to sit down. I just sat down and took the throne, and we were just in. So we pretty much just stayed back. It was, you guys are making the world yourselves. You guys are making your own rules. We were there to prevent law breaking. The stuff that involved infidelity, we had that's not our business.
Yeah, that's just fun reading.
Yeah, fun reading stuff. And it wasn't until WoW that they really took advantage of the gamers. I think that they saw what NCSoft had gone through with, because NCSoft also had City of Heroes and Guild Wars at the time, so they had some good stuff. They still weren't selling directly yet, and then WoW came out and just was like, you can order a pizza from our menu. Like, you could, we're manja, we want more, we want more. So they just gave everything away, and you still see it kind of aggravates me when I see the pay to play complaints, and it's like, you're not paying to play for the most part that I've ever seen in any game I've ever reviewed or played. You're paying for time. Everything that you're buying for is time based. You can get it if you spend enough time, but if people don't have the time, they spend the money. So you can get that level 20 Destiny, whatever, but you got to spend the amount of time it takes to get there.
That's an interesting calculus, because like, for somebody who's played their fair share of these MMORPGs, it's one of the cheapest forms of entertainment available, because you buy a game for $50 and then you play it for 3 years for free. Done. Or even if there's a monthly subscription fee, like I used to play Dark Age of Camelot for many years, and
it's
it was
$10
like
beer night right now.
It was $15 a month, but if you're spending 150 hours a month in the game, then it's like pennies per hour that you're playing, and most people who work or don't, whatever, they value their time at some rate. And
I tell people all the time, I mean, it's the least expensive way to be social, because you do pay your one-time fee, or your monthly PlayStation, Xbox fee to play online. But I mean, during the pandemic, Red Dead Redemption Online saved my sanity, because it felt like I was able to go out there, ride a horse, and get with my buddies, and we would talk online and chit chat and gut busting laughing, like tears coming out of our eyes, laughing. And if you look at the camera in my room, I'm by myself, I look like a madman. But in actuality, I'm in the Wild West with my buddies, having a great time fishing, trying to catch the biggest fish.
I had a similar experience and continue to do so in New World. To go back to our loneliness conversation before, because it seems like, this might be generalizing a little bit, but like a certain type of person gravitates towards these games. And so I found a lot of like very intelligent, seemingly very capable of doing like high level work, but for whatever reason, they don't feel like they belong in ordinary society. And so they invest their significant mental resources into like solving the puzzles of the game or becoming a wealthy aristocrat avatar instead of real life. And it blows my mind. I'm like, these people could be like the highest functioning tech workers, but for whatever reason, they've chose to opt out of normal society and only do it within the context of this fictional Renaissance world.
I kind of identify with them.
I do. I hang out with them, so like I do too.
Because I was in the corporate world deep. I started off at 18 working for Val SBC, the phone company. I was a customer service rep on a fast track to be a manager. And I was like, this is not quite for me. I was having like a anxiety going to work and just dreading going to work. And I was like, I was sitting there drawing all the time at my desk, and people were like, this is what you should be doing. Like, you need to go to art school. Okay, so I went to art school and I got involved in corporate America again, and making six figures is not all that it's cracked up to be. You know, it's like you start to realize.
Well, it goes back to that time versus money investment, and like it's always the trade-off. And when you go too far one way or the other, then it starts to take its toll.
And then when they're paying you, and then all of a sudden you realize that they could have been paying you more, and they really didn't value you, and you know, you really didn't mean that much to them after all. You kind of throw your hands up, like, why do I bother? And then I also think there's an awakening going on right now when it comes to experiences over money. You know, I think people just want quality experiences rather than money. You know, if you can get that in a video game, you know, hanging out with your buds, then why not? You know, and so
I think also it's like for a lot of people who can't take, you know, adventures to New Zealand several times a year because it's cost prohibitive. The internet and soon to be the metaverse is going to be the only means of escape for people who, you know, live in a crappy apartment and in a neighborhood they don't want to go outside in. I check
a lot. I live in downtown LA, but also too, I'm disabled, and I was a former athlete who I used to love the feeling of running, just the wind and the cold hitting your nose the way it does when you sprint. You know, it's something I cannot get nowadays because I'm not able to run. But with VR, it's opened up a whole new world of physicality for me that I haven't been able to have, where it's competitive. You know, if I want to box, I can box somebody, you know, it's fun, and I can beat up a 12-year-old in New Zealand and it's totally legal, with Creed. And you know, with No Man's Sky, you know, talk about going to different planets. You go to different planets, and you're
a literally infinite procedurally generated world where if you wanted to, you could spend every second for the rest of your life and see different things every time.
Yes, it's a beautiful concept. I'm glad Hello Games stuck with it, because I mean, they just came out with yet another update. I think it's the 127th update overall. Man, and this one was just for VR because the VR 2 came out for the PlayStation.
So speaking of AR, VR, do you have any thoughts about, I mean, there's a lot of hubbub recently on the internets about like the new TikTok filters that are like so real that they make Gen Xers look like they were teenagers, and they make women look like they've had plastic surgery, and you literally, it's not like a kitty cat pasted over somebody's face. Like, you really can't tell the difference.
Yeah, I've seen some.
And this is affecting people's perception of themselves, and possibly affecting whether people want to go out as their normal selves and be seen without the filters. And we're very quickly, I mean, you know, Google Glasses kind of flopped, but I think we're still very close to the world where you're going to have some kind of prosthetic or contact lens or built-in cybernetic implant where everything that you see will have the AR overlay on it, and so the filters will be permanent, and everyone will look the way they want their avatar to look. Do you have any thoughts about that?
That
world
is scary. That is scary. Which is why, like, when it comes to people who I date, I like to date a very natural looking person. Like, I don't like a lot of makeup on the people who I date.
We agree.
Yeah, so, you know, the whole filtered thing is just, it just seems like a terrible thing to happen. And because
it's also scary because it's like women are already used to the putting on the artifice and like makeup and all this stuff to make themselves look better, and so it seems almost like a natural extension that then you would just digitally enhance your face because it's convenient and it's faster and it's easier, but like it kind of gets scarier and scarier.
You know, and love yourself. Learn to love your imperfections, your stretch marks. That's the main thing I can say to anybody, man or woman. Learn to love yourself as much as possible. No one's perfect. It's an impossibility. Get that out of your head of a perfection. You know, there's always something off one of us. And, you know, the physical beauty isn't what matters. If it does fade, you know, all beauty fades in everything. And some people stay, you know, handsome their whole life, you know, and they're 90 years old still looking good, you know, but that's not what matters. It's the inner beauty that matters. That's what's going to last a long time and keep you healthy and alive, is how beautiful are you on the inside.
Well, once again, you've given a very healthy message to people who are dealing with this phenomenon. But me as the dark cyberpunk pessimist is like, are we, because, you know, we talked a lot about MMORPGs. I think they're kind of like a harbinger for what's going to happen to the rest of the world. Like, we're used to a world where we go in and we're avatars, and I'm a half elven knight instead of dude who works for a financial newspaper during the day.
Right.
But is that phenomenon going to encompass everyone in like 10, 15 years from now?
Well, there's a theory that, and then we're going to ancient alien stuff here. There's a theory that we will someday evolve to be nothing but avatars in an AI environment. You know, there's some theories that the aliens that are coming here are avatars. You know, they're being controlled by AI someplace, you know, aliens someplace far off.
Oh, I think you found a new nexus of conversation with this. This is like AI and aliens.
Yes.
I think we're getting somewhere now.
Yeah, so I think that that it's a possibility in our future that we will be able to. I mean, I've actually spoken to somebody who worked in VR and biomechanics and said that we were very surely soon going to be able to upload a consciousness into an organic digital brain.
I saw some very scary stuff recently. I believe it was some Korean researchers that were able to just look at brainwaves while the people that the brainwaves were being studied were looking at a particular picture, and the algorithm could just pull out of the brainwaves and pretty good approximation of what they were looking at. Like, it could redraw the picture without having seen it, just looking at the brainwaves. So that's how close we are to just plugging somebody's mind into something, and who knows, like broadcasting their memories on a screen somewhere, or showing them a virtual world that is indistinguishable
or
from
uploading their personality.
Yeah.
You know, and all of a sudden, I think there's a Black Mirror episode where the AI personality that's existing in the cloud is so complete that they're able to talk to their loved ones still after they pass.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's some
that also exists to some extent now, where there's like a chat GPT like AI who you can feed, you know, diary entries or phone conversations you've had with a lost loved one, and then it'll be like, I'll take it from here, and I'll approximate their personality so that you can get closure by talking to that person.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's scary. That to me just sends chills on my spine. You know, it's creepy, it's weird. I mean, I think we as humans need to, you know, understand our limitations. And also too that, you know, my belief is that this isn't the end of all life. Like, this is just a stopping stage of experience for our souls before we move on to something else. Or we might come back to Earth again and relive another human experience if we need to. Yeah, that holding on, the clinging to people who have gone and needing to closure.
Or like cloning your dead pet. And
yeah, you
recreating
need to
them
learn.
again.
You need to learn how to let that stuff go. You know, because I have 2 wonderful pets, and I'm like, you know, I'm probably gonna stuff and mount them, just so you know, I can't let them go. I don't want to clone them. I don't want to let them go either.
I don't want to get too deep into the psychology of this stuff, but is this whole thing that we're talking about, is it all just fear of death? Is that the whole thing? Like, we're afraid of getting older, we're afraid of expiring, so we put these AI filters to make ourselves look young. We try to resurrect, you know, our dead relatives with AI technology.
I don't know if it's so much a fear of death, it's so much more of the wanting for acceptance, wanting to be accepted by everybody. You know, everybody's got to think I'm beautiful, everybody's got to think I'm funny, everybody's got to love me. You know, I got all the likes in the world, all the hearts in the world, and that's not what it's all about. You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. You know, even comedians, you know, not everybody likes every comedian, but every comedian's out there trying to be funny, but not everybody likes them, you know, and for different reasons. So I think that the same thing comes with the looks. You know, it's like what they've been fed a lot, unfortunately, with social media is, you know, your looks matter, and all these Instagram models bearing it all, you know, and it's like, yeah, it's fine and great, but, you know, what are you looking for in life, you know?
So this is a good AI point out here. Do you think that, I mean, granted, we're both in the entertainment field, we've both been in the comedy field, we know a lot about narcissism and its expressions, right? Do you think that the social media algorithms in particular are driving us to be even more narcissistic, even more self-aggrandizing, even more seeking of attention than people were before all of this stuff?
Oh yeah. Social media is an experiment, you know. It's a live experiment that we're living through right now, unfortunately. No one asked our consent, but we're in this now. And it's not been good. You know, it's been a handy tool when used as a tool, you know, but unfortunately, just like with guns, you can't give everyone a gun and, you know, best intentions, you know, they're not all going to use it the right way. You know, same thing with social media. It's like, we know we shouldn't put any stock into it. We know that people are only showing the good side of their life, you know. I've even had the thought about, like, I should show all my bad days rather than never post about my good days. Just show nothing but bad days. Just to give people the reality of, like, look, it's not, you know, we all have problems. We all go through shit. We all go through different things. And I think that social media has made people feel disconnected rather than bringing them together. You know, it's like, rather than showing, like, look, we all have these problems. It's like, oh, look how good this is for me, or look how good this is for me. And you get the what is it? Keeping up with the
Joneses.
Keeping up with the Joneses. You know, it's like, oh, I got to get this, I got to get that, I got to be like them. And it's, you know, you just, you know, I think we're lucky that we grew up in our Xennial mentality.
I feel very, very lucky to have experienced life where, as a kid, you just go and play outside until dusk, and then you go home, and the playing is like playing hide and seek in the middle of a giant, like, again, this was more of a rural setting for me, but it's just in somebody's like empty field behind their house, and you're just running around in total freedom. Like,
well, yeah, you know,
kids don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I know. I grew up here in LA, and I always say, man, I used to ride my bike 5 miles away from home at like 6 years old. You know, and I, you know, you come home, and if you miss the show, you miss the show. Like, too bad. I remember I rushed home to see the Cosby Show because they were going to show the new Nirvana, music video at the same time, during one of the commercial breaks, and it was one of those things where it was just a simpler time where, you were forced to talk to your siblings and your friends, and, if you had the rich friend in the neighborhood, it didn't make you feel bad about it. You went over his house and you guys hung out and you played with his toys, and there wasn't a distant disconnect. It didn't feel like, because I had rich kids in my neighborhood and I had poor kids in my neighborhood, and we all played together, and, to us, rich was, you have all the toys and, a video game system and, you had all the cool snacks.
The brand new TurboGrafx 16.
Yeah, the pudding cups. You had pudding cups. Like, oh, you guys must be rich. You got pudding cups. And it was just, and with social media now, we're not so inclined to go hang out with our friends anymore. We just like, oh, I see what they're doing on social media. And it gives us a false sense of busy, too. It's like, oh, I'm busy.
One of my reactions to being an introvert and being a nerdy kid, I know that you made a very clear semantic distinction between geeks and nerds in your book, which I read. So I would classify myself probably more as a nerd because I was a high academic achiever, but at the same time, felt socially awkward enough that I spilled over into geekdom and loved Star Wars and stuff.
Yeah.
But so as an adult, my reaction to that was to start taking improv classes because they ended up being more of a human training where you're forced to learn how to listen to people. You're forced to learn to read their body language. You're forced to know, do they have ulterior motives in what they're saying, because you need to use that when you're on stage to find narrative of what are they really saying to you. Mm-hmm. Did you find that in any of your live performance experience? And do you think that is the saving grace for all of our disconnectedness and people not being able to reach each other is go to be a theater kid?
Well, let me see. I got into theater when I was in high school by accident. I needed a elective. And I was like, okay, I'll take drama. It'd be fun. And it did expose me to. It made me connect with people on a deeper level and try to understand human behavior. The why as to why we do things, the motivation. That's I think it's called. And yeah, I think that now with our disconnect with the social media thing, I think people do need to go out there more and take initiative to be more social. Join the kickball leagues. And join the gaming leagues. And join a league. Get out there, play softball, bowling, ceramics.
I love kickball though as an example because
so much fun.
It's the quintessential sport for people who didn't consider themselves to be athletes. You
don't need to be.
And I did something very similar. I was in the WDS, the World Dodgeball Society.
I was about to say dodgeball as well, right?
It's the other side of the same coin.
And they play by the World Dodgeball leagues, right? From the movie Dodgeball. Is that the league?
Everybody says that. They're like, do you dodge wrenches in practice? I'm like, no, we're aware of the movie. The movie probably made it more popular.
Duck, dodge, and dive.
Dip, duck, dodge, and dive.
I love that movie. But yeah, I mean, getting out there and, especially if you're looking to meet somebody, I think I put that in the book. If you're looking to meet somebody, meeting them in person and doing stuff like that is probably the best way. Going to bars and it's just not going to.
I can't recommend that highly enough. You're very good advice for online dating notwithstanding. It's easier to not have to meet somebody, figure out if you have anything in common, figure out if you're interested in them, and have a conversation for the first time rather than just have an activity. You don't have to worry about that stuff, and you'll come across this person again, and you have more time to figure all that stuff out.
There's hiking groups. There's so many different groups out there. It doesn't have to be physical if you're not into the physical stuff, or if you're not want to get on stage. You can do ceramics. I think there's painting and drinking wine. There's things you go out there, learn, take a cooking class. It sounds kind of like old school dating book advice, but it's kind of true. Right now, we have to put more effort into interacting with people. I have a dog roof where I live, but I go down to the dog park because I have to talk to them there. And it's my social interaction with humans for the day. When my dogs play with other dogs, I talk to the human owners and get that camaraderie. And, making friends, and old school again.
And I'm particularly very biased toward this old school stuff for obvious reasons. It's one of the reasons I'm so glad that you came on so that we could reminisce about the way, almost as the old crotchety men who are like, in my day, we went outside and we smelled the grass and that's how we knew what the weather was. But I really appreciate your perspective on how to incorporate that old school mindset into this world where we're all basically turning into avatars. But I think on that note, I just want to thank you for being here, Patrick.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor and a privilege it was, and a lot of fun. Thank you.
And we'll have more alien alien talk next time.
For sure.
Right.
Sounds good. Oh man, the aliens thing. Are we still rolling? The aliens is the CE5 I was telling you about. Dr. Stephen Greer is the creator of that. He was the guy who was in charge of briefing all the incoming presidents on what we knew. And he just had it one day. He's like, I'm done doing this for you guys, because they were trying to use alien technology for weaponry. And he's like, the aliens they're not trying to come here for that. They want the expansion of the species. And what they found during all the crashed UFO stuff was that the technology was controlled through thought power. They used these helmets that they would wear and just the machines turned on. So meditation is how to talk to the aliens, is how basically they're not going to talk with their mouths, we're going to talk with our minds. They're going to, when we do make contact, it's going to be all telepathy, and we're going to freak out and not know how to do it. But he's basically, his C5 movement is about getting people to start to meditate on how to contact, and people have been making contact, and it's been caught on video, like the orbs behind people. One guy had his hearing, he was deaf his whole life. He had the speech for the hearing person, had his hearing completely fixed by an alien.
That's
like
so crazy.
He was meditating, and he says that he wound up in their ship, like he was just in their ship, his consciousness.
That's insane.
And he could see them, and he was talking to them, and like, we're peaceful, we're coming, we heard you talking to us, welcome, you learned how to do it, kind of thing. He's like, okay, great, well, can you fix my hearing? Like, and he woke up the next morning, and they were on a retreat, a group of people, and they found him out in the woods just crying, and they're like, what's wrong? He's like, I can hear, and they're like, what the, like,
That's
everyone
so crazy.
freaked out. And they actually have a picture of him during the meditation, and there's this orb-like person thing standing behind him, and no one saw that with the naked eye.
Yeah.
But it came out on the print afterwards. So it's like, there's so many things like that happening.
Dude, this guy that I knew from like a clown performance group that was well known in the city, he sent out an email to everyone on his email list that he was like pursuing an advanced degree in parapsychology. And so he had a psychic test that you could volunteer for if you wanted to, where he had like a little laptop locked in a closet that would be displaying something, and it had a little document with like a pin code on it. And it's just like, focus on these things that are going to be on the laptop in this window. And like hundreds of people did it, and they sent back the report of like how well you did on the psychic test. And I was like, not at the top, but in the upper third.
Okay.
Like, got some of the digits right and got the passphrase close. And
well, Stranger Things, that whole MI6, we did that. We did have Jedi mind training camps, and China, they were the most advanced. They had a girl who could make things grow.
Crazy.
Like, she would wave her hand over a seedling and it would sprout blossoms. They pulled their plug as far as reporting, because it was like a national, a worldwide conglomerate. They stopped reporting on what they were finding in the 70s. So who knows what they've gotten up to now. So yeah, the whole mind telepathy thing, that's what CE5 is all about, is about making communication. They get groups together in the deserts or everywhere, actually. Like, I saw a group in downtown, and they meditate in a group, and UFOs show up, and they get them on camera and get them on film. And the whole movement is to circumvent the government by making it a worldwide effort, because I think he uses physics, and he says, like, one drop will, desolate across the whole mass. It only takes 1% of the people's minds to change for everyone else's minds to start to change about the idea.
I will say, though, that like it is a hopeful sentiment that like, we're so utterly dominated by technology that like, people thinking of like a revolutionary style revolt is kind of ridiculous, just because of like satellites and drones and like the overwhelming amount of force that a government can pull against you. But if your way out is psychic ability, then that's something that nobody has a monopoly over,
and they can't control it. And that's why the government really was coming down on Stephen Greer for a while, because it's like you taking the power out of the government's hands and giving it to the masses. Like, it was a secret. And once the people realize that, wait, if all of us start meditating, they're going to come sooner. They're going to make an appearance sooner. They won't be able to hide the secrets anymore. I mean, Greer has said there's already unlimited power available. You don't need to be using fossil fuels like we are now. Like, all this technology is available. Medical technology is available. But for some reason, there's a dark power in the world that is keeping it from happening.
Are you talking about future technology that's sequestered by the government, or are you talking about alien tech?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. Because according to Greer, we've been working with aliens since the 40s. And Germany in the 30s. They started working with aliens in the 30s. There's been more than just the Roswell and the Black Fort. There's been hundreds of crashes. And some believe that some have been shot down. Like, we've been shooting them down to gather their technology, which is even worse. It's like they come for a visit, we took their wallet. It's like we are terrible.
Oh man, that's like video game stuff.
Yeah, we are just
like
terrible
looting
the
aliens.
We did, man. We did pretty much. That's where we got the night vision. Is from their.
Do you think that's what the recent, post Chinese spy balloon, other unidentified object that we shot down that they didn't talk about? You think that's what that was?
Mm-hmm. It's hiding in plain sight. It's exactly what they were going to do. And like all of us UFOologists, like out of the playbook, right? Mm-hmm. Chinese balloon first. Yeah, everybody looking, and then acceptance of the 3 other UFOs that they shot down that were unidentified, truly unidentified. Mm-hmm. Those are the 3 that really like are eyebrow raising, because it's like, okay, and we don't want that. That's the thing that Greer is trying to prevent, because that's the policy right now, is we're going to shoot them down and take their technology. Mm-hmm. And Greer is like, that
seems safe.
Yeah, it
seems like a safe play.
And then Greer is like, you know what? It's so stupid that if they wanted to end us, they would end us like that.
Yeah,
and it would be no contest.
Yeah, it'd be like, why would they allow us to shoot down their, galactic traveling?
And according to Greer, it's because they know the majority of us are good. They know the majority of us want the good.
These are some benevolent ass aliens, man. If they believe, like, thankfully, if you want to take those hypotheses, to heart, like that they would allow us to destroy their scout ships, knowing that it's only on behalf of like a small cadre of sociopaths, and not on everybody else.
It goes back to how we view life. Life is like life only the way it is here. They don't value life the way we value life individually. To it's the collective consciousness. I saw this video that still bothers me. I think it's fake, but sometimes I wonder if they took the script from the actual meeting. But it was a UFO, it was a government meeting with a UFO survivor, one of the Greys, and they asked him, like, where are you from? And he's like, you traveled through space. He's like, yes, but where are you from? He's like, I'm from Earth. He's like, well, you said you're from space, you came from space. He's like, to travel through space and time is not like it is here on Earth. Like, our understanding is different. He's like, so you know the meaning of life? And he's like, yes. It's like, it's not what you guys understand as life, and it's impossible to explain it to you. Yeah. But it is, part of a collective consciousness.
I'm totally into that stuff.
Yeah, me too. And like when my mom passed away recently, I knew beforehand because I felt it, and I was like, those kind of things are like, when you're dealing with the heaven space, or the trying to blank for the word, I saw it in the movie Soul, the astral plane. That's the universe. The astral plane is the universe. It's where souls are. It's where God is. It's where heaven is. It's where we all go to kind of recharge our soul batteries and go back out into the universe. And all this collectiveness that we're getting makes the astral plane bigger. It's like it adds to the collective pool of all the memory, the love, the hate, everything that goes on in the universe goes into this astral plane pool, which is why the universe is growing and growing and growing. Because we're having these experiences here, but there's snails on Alpha Primary 20 having those experiences, and that's going into the astral plane as well. So all these different life beings from all these different galaxies are all feeding into the astral plane, which is why the universe is growing. So I think that once we understand that as a species, like we're just adding to the universe with our memories and living life, I think we would stop pursuing the bullshit, pursuing
wealth.
Yeah, it's like
drudgery and one-upsmanship.
Yeah, it's like, have sex, have laughs, the things that matter. Sex, laughter, eating, sleeping, having a good time, spending time with your family, spending time with your loved ones, your friends. That's the stuff that actually matters, not your bank account.
Well, here, that I love that point of view.
Hopefully the aliens show up and they change everything.
I think before we cut out a long time ago before we transitioned to the alien podcast, but I don't know for a fact. George, are we out?
Oh yeah, no, when you guys.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we just kept going. As we tend to do.
Dude, that was so great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for making this happen.
That was so much fun.
We must have gone for like an hour and a half or something.
It felt like it.
That.
I think about an hour and a half. Look sexy.
Good luck. Clearly no shortage of ground to cover. That's like